when we're living a life that's not true to who we are. We're being something or somebody else, and that creates a pool of what I call unlived life. And it's in the unlived life, I believe, where the disease begins.
Before we dive into this week's episode, let's talk about a brand we both genuinely love, Cytoplan. You've probably heard us mention them before, and that's because their supplements are next level.
Yes, Cytoplan has been part of my routine for a while now. They just get it when it comes to health. Their whole approach is rooted in science and totally in tune with nature.
Exactly. Their formulas are bioeffective, which basically means the nutrients are in forms your body actually recognizes and uses properly and at the appropriate levels. Cytoplan is used and trusted by health practitioners across the country. Their formulas are developed by nutritional therapists and backed by over 3 decades of clinical insight. You really can feel the quality when you take them.
Plus, it's not just about what's in the bottle, it's the mission behind it too. Cytoplan is 100% owned by a charitable foundation, which means everything they do is about helping people live well for longer. It's not about trends or quick fixes, it's about real, lasting health.
That is so wonderful to know. And whether it's our energy, perimenopause, menopause itself, sleep, immunity, or just staying on top of your health, they've got you covered. You can also get a free health questionnaire and a consultation by ringing the helpline.
So if you're ready to take ownership of your health, check out Cytoplan, powered by nature, proven by science, and rooted in purpose. We'll pop the link and an exclusive 15% discount code in the show notes. Hello, I'm Karen Mellors.
Hello there, I'm Dr. Rosy Daniel.
You've just tuned in to Alive and Loving It, and we're here to help you bring joy and energy back to your life. We're here again. Thank you so much for joining us, and thank you to our new listeners as well. Since we've started season 3 in 2026, we've had an increase of new listeners. So welcome to you, and we hope that you've got time to catch up on the previous episodes as well. But we have a juicy one for you today. Rosy has tuned in this morning, had a huge download. Messaging me very early on. I've had an epiphany, Karen. So we can't wait for this one, Rosy. We are episode 34 and just at the beginning of a new principle, a new health creation principle, which we haven't talked about before, but we've touched on in every single episode, I feel. And it's called vitality. And Rosy, you've put it in the spirit section of the health creation model. And the title of today's episode is Vitality and the Life Energy Factor. So the first thing I'm going to ask you is, how are you? By the way, I'm just chatting away to myself and not said hello to you yet. How are you?
I'm very well indeed, and very happy to be talking about this really absolutely quintessentially important subject.
I can feel and see the fire in your belly with this one. So why is our vitality so important? And probably you're going to go on to explain exactly what vitality is, Rosy.
Okay, so when I first came into holistic healthcare, and I noticed that there were some 200 complementary medicines, I thought, caramba, badanga, they can't all have a different reality. There must be a linking thing here. And as I delved deeper, I saw that all of them were based around this idea of the life force. So in yoga, it's the prana. In acupuncture, it's the chi. In shiatsu, it's the ki. And in homeopathy, the vital force. And so what became clear to me is that when the ancients were looking at human beings before they were doing physiology, anatomy, biochemistry, what they were looking at was the vitality. And not just, in the big picture, like if we're looking at our plants to see has our plant got chi and life force, but in fine gradations. And so in acupuncture, they will break the qualities of our life energy down into earth, fire, water, metal, wood. And in the yogic system of the looking at the prana, they talk about 72,000 channels within the being for these nadis or energy channels. So the ancients, without all the numbing effect of media and all the things that can dumb us down and keep us distracted, in their very vibrant states of consciousness and awareness, were able to see and discern not only how much life force somebody's got, but the very fine balance or imbalance of those energies. So it became clear to me that our vitality is the fuel for life. It is the thing that runs us. And we know when we've got it, because when we are full of energy, chi, vitality, life is easy and things come towards us and our consciousness rises and we know things we didn't know we knew. Whereas, when our vitality is low and the tide is out, life gets very hard. And in fact, even in general practice, there's a condition called TAT, TATT, which is the GP shorthand for tired all the time.
I wonder, Rosy, just to interrupt you there, sorry. I wonder whether it's something I've taken for granted and just almost not even noticed when I've got energy, but I definitely notice when I haven't. So that tired all the time syndrome, that's a recognized term, is it?
Yes, I mean, I saw a study saying that 47% of people going to the GP say, I am just tired all the time. I go to bed tired, I wake up tired, sleep doesn't seem to refresh me. In acupuncture, that's a red light flashing because as the vitality goes down, it means not only that we've got less of our vital energy available, but that it's out of balance. So when you go to an acupuncturist or a shiatsu practitioner and they take the pulses, they can feel which energies are low, which is kyo symptoms, and which ones are high and fighting, and which is called jitsu. And so, for example, when we are stressed and frightened and in grief, our lung energy goes down, our kidney energy goes down. But correspondingly, our liver can be shouty and angry, and our tummy can be, our stomach can be shouty and angry, because sometimes the mixed in with grief and stress is some anger. And I can remember going to my incredible acupuncturist in Bristol, now passed over, but he could take my pulse and he could say to me, Rosy, aren't you getting fed up of being up at night peeing 3 times? And I would say, how the hell do you know that, Tony? And he would say, because you've been working so hard that your kidney energy is really low, your lung energy is low. And so he would channel energy from my stomach and liver through into the lungs and the kidneys. I would stop having to get up to wee at night. And the first time I went, I said I sort of went in feeling like a note and I came out feeling like a chord. It was kind of like, I was fully back.
Yeah, I had a similar experience last week. I found an acupuncturist in Inverness, a Chinese acupuncturist, and called Jenny Wren. And she took my pulse first, and then I laid on the bed. I've never had as many needles put in me. It was like all down the right-hand side, right in my head, neck, shoulder. And isn't that where I've been feeling all the pain? Down the right-hand side. And this week, I feel like a different person. feel I can get up in the morning, really do my exercises. I've got motivation. So it's linked to so many other things, isn't it? What it's making me think about though, Rosie, is that going into a GP surgery and saying I'm tired all the time, I guess then triggers a number of tests to try and find something wrong with you. But the tired all the time is what is wrong. The chi is not flowing.
Yeah. And there's no lecture in the medical school curriculum on tired all the time. And the classic things as a GP you might think of as if someone's tired all the time is, are they anemic? Are they stressed? And you might be thinking about social reasons, and anxiety or poor sleep, but it can mean so much more.
Yeah, wow. I feel like we're just lifting the top of Pandora's box here. Juicy. Let's dive in. So, in the health creation approach, you have this tool called the picture of health. We've mentioned it a few times. And that is what measures the life energy factor. This is the model you have come up with to measure it. So, where did that tool come from, Rosie?
So, as you can imagine, and this is why I've put this in the spirit section of the program, that this is an invisible entity. You know, we don't have a meter to measure how much of this precious chi that we have. However, after years of working as a holistic doctor in a fully rounded team at the Bristol Cancer Help Centre, because we had body workers, we had emotional workers, we had spiritual healers, we had awareness of what was going on in people's environment, but there was a whole team of us. And so when I came away from there and thinking, okay, how can people get a handle on what's going on with their energy without needing a team of 10 therapists? This tool dropped into my mind. I hadn't heard of this kind of a tool, but apparently it's called a spider graph, where you have spokes of a wheel and numbered from 0 in the middle out to 10 on the outside in our case. And the idea is that these spokes of the wheel, there are 3 principles for the body, 3 for the mind, 3 for the spirit, and 3 for the environment. And they're all made up of behaviors that people have, which are defining how much energy they have or are losing in a given principle. So we can dive deeper into that in a minute. So I created 120 questions on 12 spokes of the wheel. People go in and they just answer yes, no, whichever is truest today. And they end up with a score out of 120, which the computer calculates and turns into a percentage, which I have started calling the life energy factor. So what the picture of health is mapping is, where am I good at looking after my life energy, and where am I allowing it to flow away, to run away, and what are those either behaviors or patterns or the ways I think or believe, how are they draining me of my life energy?
So every time you answer no to one of those questions, that is saying that particular behavior is draining energy rather than giving you energy.
Exactly.
Okay.
Exactly. Now, this is not an exact science. This is not an objective measure like a scientific tool. It's been pointed out to me that even doing this exercise makes people change, because I am bringing awareness to 120 things that can affect your precious, precious, precious life energy.
I've seen some clients who have never even thought of some of these areas before. So I agree with you. You know, the awareness that's brought in around behavior, once you shine a light on it, can actually be the thing that just changes it straight away.
And it's a deeper model. So in lifestyle medicine these days, they're focusing on food, exercise, stress, relationships, mainly. I think there's a new piece about toxicity. That's 5 of 12 health creation principles, because we're going deeper into relationships, authenticity, spirituality, the impact of my space, of nature, of my communities. So we are looking through 12 different lenses at what's going on with our life energy. But the beauty of this, even though it's a snapshot on a given day of, how I'm feeling or perceiving my energy, but people like to have, it gives people a visual map, so that they can see which are the quadrants and which are the principles where energy is low. But it also gives them a metric. And, there's that old truism that if we can map, we can manage. So, if you can see it in front of your eyes where the dips are, where you may be taking risks with your health and your energy, then you can do this magical work with your mentor and start to think about what you can change. And the incredible beauty of the holistic model is change that you make in any of the 12 principles will affect all of the others. So if your space is really cluttered and you bring in color and flowers and some bright cushions or soft furnishings like you brought into your house in Shrewsbury, that might decrease your stress level, or it might actually help you sleep better. So all of these things have a wonderful synergistic effect.
And what happens when, because I agree with you, and I've seen clients, measuring over a period of 6 months, this life energy factor, and being, hope coming in because they can see it rising from the changes they're making. But what does change as our life energy factor rises?
Okay, so when we are full of energy, everything gets easier. Change gets easier, exercising gets easier. And then when our life energy gets really high, then we start, our consciousness rises as well. So people experience this because when we're in that high energy state, we start becoming more clairvoyant, clairaudient, clairsentient. We think of somebody, they telephone, we make an intention or an affirmation, it happens. So there is an extraordinary relationship between this precious life energy and how potent we are as beings. And also that what I've seen in people who've been life threatened and working with this model is that as that consciousness rises, we can see more clearly our true nature as spiritual beings in physical bodies. And extraordinarily, people often in that state lose their fear of death and dying, which in turn releases a whole load more life energy.
I feel I'm on the edge of my understanding here. I love it when we get to this place. I'm like, oh, I'm right there with my understanding. But what I heard you just say is that if you can take small actions that raises our life energy factor, that then increases our motivation to make even more change. So it feels like it's becoming an upward spiral. And now you're connecting it to becoming more conscious and tuning into other higher energies. I mean, I've heard the term ascension, Rosy, awakening. These are terms that are being used in mainstream now. And again, you're joining the dots for me of, let's take some little change and measure it down here, and it spirals up and spirals up and spirals up.
Exactly. So I feel that there is a very primary relationship between consciousness, in which we have the clarity of thought and intention, energy, which is the fuel, and love, or heart's desire. And I've even done a spoof on Einstein's relativity equation, which is C for consciousness equals E for energy times love squared, like E equals M squared, for the whole of reality. And we find this to be true. Now, the extraordinary thing about consciousness in the prophet, the Khalil Gibran prophet, he says, talk to us of enlightenment. And the Prophet says enlightenment is a two-way street. We can rise into a state of clarity and perception of the true nature of reality, of the unified field, and we can drop out of that again. So it's like when you're in an aeroplane and you're flying along, and then you go up in the clouds, you can't see anything at all. And then suddenly, boof, you pop out and you can see the blue sky again and the sunshine and all of that. And I think that one of the things I misunderstood as a young person on a spiritual path is, that idea that enlightenment was a one-way street, and that, when you get there, it's bing, you're now you're now up and aloft. But it isn't like that. I think we have moments of lifting into that higher consciousness. And the extraordinary privilege I've had working with people who are life threatened is that when the ordinary everyday fears have been imploded or collapsed, and people are in deep, profound connection with their spirit and their truth, that often people pop out into that clarity of consciousness and lose their fear of dying. So, and when the Prince of Wales, as then was the king, used to come to the centre, and I said, it's so great, why do you keep coming? And he said, to see the light in people's eyes, people who had grasped that, that reality about the nature of their spiritual being.
It's interesting, though. I'm really glad, and thank you for naming the fact that, even day by day, you can be becoming more conscious and feel really great, have life energy, this life energy force, but you can drop out of it and go back down again. I think what you were just describing then, Rosie, is our humanness, our humanity, that we drop out of it when there's something that happens to us, or we're triggered into feeling an old wound. And at that point, we need compassion. But it's also probably why some people, some clients might say, I've tried everything to help myself and I can't, particularly around nutrition. They've gone on so many diets and it's not made a difference. And I spotted quite early on that this link between eating and your emotional state. And therefore, what I do now with people is suggest we look at some of the other quadrants, particularly, in the spirit section, to help them lift up.
Let's look at the other end of the spectrum in terms of what happens when the energy levels drop down.
Yes.
So when I teach about this, I draw my energy graph with a notional 30% line and a notional 70% line. So my model is that, most of us through life, busyness, stress, all the things we do, we're perhaps jogging along at about 50% of available life energy. And then something hits us, whether it's illness or a divorce or a job loss or, some trauma or another. And, or it can be slow and steady that, all the things we do that drag our energy down, toxicity, poor diet, etc., that we find ourselves underneath a critical 30% energy level in which self-help is almost impossible. So if then, as therapists, coaches, good friends, we say, oh, all you need to do is go to the gym or start this diet or, then that can be the final straw that lands us on the floor thinking, I can't even get the CD in the CD player or the thing on the TV to do a yoga class, because it's almost a definition of that low energy state when you know what would make a difference, but you can't do it. And so we have to be really careful as helpers and when we beat ourselves up in terms of recognizing, okay, if I'm down in that low energy place, then what I need is compassion and kindness, but I need passive input of energy from things like spiritual healing or Reiki or touch like aromatherapy, or group support like the kinds of circles you're running, to start to feel some safety and comfort and warmth and encouragement and encouragement, to get myself back above that 30% line where self-help becomes possible.
And of course, at that point, we're learning to receive instead of give out, which is probably the mode that we're in all the time. If our life energy is just, we're losing it, we're giving out all the time. And we're learning, in this case, receiving of passive energy.
Yeah. And I think that's, you've absolutely hit the nail on the head, because when I meet people that are in that place and I talk to them about receiving, I couldn't do that, or, we bump into low self-esteem, I'm not worth it, people who will never take time or for themselves or spend any money on themselves. So the very first thing I have to do is give people permission to receive. This is your time. This is the moment for you to actually start receiving. And then the second thing, because people will, when they're very low, they may well accept a bit of help or love or comfort. But how many of the people I meet, then the minute they've got a little tiny bit of energy again, they think, all these people have helped me, I've got to go and run a support group, or, make up to all those people in the school who helped me, and they give it all away again, and they're down now again under 30%, but without the resource network. So step 2, getting up that energy ladder, is putting myself at the top of the list of people I look after. And that is a biggie, because I've already said the vast majority of the people I meet are people who are other focused over givers.
And in that place, one of the hardest things that has to be learned is the word no, because we'll be in a pattern, in a relationship pattern with so many others where they're so used to you giving and they are taking, and they don't change in the relationship. They still keep carrying on. And for us, it's about putting boundaries in and being able to say no in the kindest possible way. But navigating that, what you're comfortable with, how you're comfortable with saying no. That's tender territory, I call that. Really tender territory.
It is, and it takes bravery. But I have had clients who were told they were life-threatened, who've carried on living, and I've said, what of all the modalities you've used has brought you back to life? And they said, I learned to say no. I can remember one lady saying to me, before I was a doormat, I would do anything for anybody. I didn't have the word no in my vocabulary. And you don't have to be rude, when you're learning to say no. You can say, actually, can I just think about that? Or that's not actually feeling quite right for me at the moment. Or, can I just take a pause? So that you create some negotiation ground. And also, you mentioned changes in relationship patterns. There'll always be a kind of giving gradient in a couple, or a family or a workplace, where somebody's the great big radiator of energy and help. So in a couple, I can remember I lived with a dear guy who, if I sprained my ankle in the morning, by lunchtime he'd broken his hip. If I had a cold at breakfast, by supper time he'd have pneumonia. And he always managed to keep the care gradient going in his direction.
He knew which buttons to press. Definitely,
he certainly did. He certainly did. So you can expect, if you find yourself in a partnership where you're usually the caregiver, and you start saying, no, I'm really sorry, I don't have the time or the energy or the blah, blah, blah. But the other thing, the upside of that, is that you are not disabling the people around you. So if you're always the clever one, the capable one, the one who can sort things out, you are disabling the people around you. So when you enable them to find their own solutions, or, then you are empowering them. May feel uncomfortable to start with, but it bears fruit.
Much better in the long run, definitely. So we've got these 12 health creation principles, and what I'm hearing you say is that we can lose energy through all 12 of those. I mean, that's probably a 3-month training course, Rosie, to understand that fully. But can you sort of give a snapshot of what you think the top ones are in each principle?
Absolutely. And it is a training, and it's called the Health Creation Coaching and Mentorship Diploma, which is about to start in the middle of April.
Wonderful.
And I know you've done the training, and we can say more about that. But the things that shine out with the 12 principles in terms of, well, let me start with food and drink. If we are eating low quality food, and if we are overfed and undernourished, if we're not getting whole food, then we are not stoking the boiler. So it's very primitive and primary. And there was a big study, American study this week, showing that in cardiac illness, it's not even so much the fat or the carbohydrate, it's the quality of the food. So it's taken many, many, many years and 30,000 participants for them to reach this conclusion, which the nutritionists have been saying, like you from the get-go, that it's all about the quality. So when we're eating food that's local, organic, fresh, in season, full of vitality and the nutrients in the environment that we're living in, that is when all of our cells are the happiest and produce us the most raw energy.
Can I add one to that?
Yes, of course.
Get onto my soapboxing as we're talking about nutrition. You need so much energy for your basic metabolic rate to sit there and for all of these wonderful processes, self-healing and digestion and everything to work. You need a certain amount of calories, and each food set has a calorie that it brings. I agree with you. If it's organic, it's local, it's not losing that energy because it's traveled across the world. So the biggest myth when people say they want to lose weight is that they think they should eat less. They should eat more of the right calories. And then your body has all this energy to be able to break down fat, to be able to get you to move so you can walk 3 miles each day. And I can't tell you how much I've noticed it being in the Scottish Highlands, Rosie. There aren't many shops, there aren't many restaurants. We have to cook our own food. It all comes locally. And without doing anything different but that, I've dropped half a stone.
Fascinating.
And I'm eating more, like big plates of salad for lunch, huge portions. Even when I'm not feeling hungry, I'm putting that energy into my body.
Beautiful.
And it's like a switch. Your body goes, oh, we're working again now. Drop the weight, release the energy.
Yeah. Yes. Well, obviously, if we're starving ourselves, the body's hanging on, to fat and fuel. But I think the physical needs side of things, which includes sleep, and of course this rolls over into emotions and stress and anxiety. If we fail to rest, for some people, they do not have that concept even in their mind about resting. We need to take breaks. We need to allow the body to come back into balance, but we need oxygen and light. So a lot of us are tired because we are air starved and light starved. So, we all need to think about, we are creatures who photosynthesize. Our vitamin D is the one we know about that is made by sunlight, but there are many other neurotransmitters because we are forest dwelling creatures who lived amongst the trees at one point, absorbing the oxygen that the trees were giving out and all those cofactors being excreted from the trees. So if we're in hermetically sealed buildings with no air and very little light, our energy is dwindling. Of course, toxicity we've talked about a lot, but if we are filling ourselves up with toxins, the biggest one being alcohol, we get sick and very tired. And so the question there is, are you sick and tired of feeling sick and tired? would you really consciously be poisoning yourself and pulling down your energy with some kind of a poison? Of course you wouldn't. So, that's a biggie. Then we come to stress and self-stressing. So I watch the younger generation, overthink, just so much self-doubt and self-consciousness. And all this energy that's kind of nervous, anxious, neurotic energy that's just churning things over and over and over. And that is a huge drain of energy. I'm sure you're very aware of that in the people you see, Karen.
I'm aware of it in myself, Rosy, first, and something I have been working with for many, many years, particularly in the middle of the night when I find myself awake and the thoughts come in, trying to fix everybody's problems, the whole world's problems. I tell you what I've done recently to break it. I know we're going to go on to some of the keys for breaking this draining of energy and turn it round into be an upward spiral. But the one for me recently has been, I forgive myself. I'm really with my own humanity and the fact that it makes us human, that we're not perfect. And if I've made a mistake or I've hurt somebody, I haven't done it intentionally, but I forgive myself. I found that in the middle of the night last week. I don't have them very often, these stressy nights, but they've been a theme in my life. And I found that one sentence in the middle of the night and I fell straight asleep like that.
Wow,
beautiful. And I've slept through the night since. So forgiveness is a huge thing I'm starting to really write about now and think about. Yeah.
It really is. And just, as I talk about that overthinking, think about how much neurotransmitter and neuropeptide you're using up. And people don't realize one of the main reasons for depression is that they've run out of neurotransmitters because they've used them all up just going round and round and round the mulberry bush. And so the biggies, the self-help exercises of relaxation, meditation, breathing, guided visualization, and going into classrooms where you're led for an hour and a half through a yoga class or a Tai Chi or a Qigong class, where your mind gets a rest. And the same for me with singing and my choir. In that hour and a half, I do not think about anything else at all. I have a break from my own mind.
Yeah, I'm finding I'm calling it do no thing, which I'm sure I've heard on that when I did the diploma. Do no thing. And clients will say, what do you mean? How do you do no thing? So I've started realizing what are the things I'm listening to? What are the things I'm doing that just take my mind, like switch off. With a computer, like you had to do before we started, it gets into this what's called thrashing mode, and you switch it off and you switch it on and it resolves 99.9% of computer problems.
Yeah.
We should take a lesson. Yeah.
Well, that comes from my dear friend Christina Robino, who was a hilarious person and also into a Zen life perspective. And that do no thing came from her because she'd seen me getting myself into a right old twizzle, when I was chief executive at the Bristol Cancer Help Centre. And I'd say, should I do this? Should I do this? And she'd say, stop, do no thing. And it's kind of like, oh my God, what a relief.
Well, I really like with this, that you've put it in the spirit section today. Even I've seen that so many times, but I'm like, why? Something's piqued my interest. Well, when you do no thing, or some people might call letting go, releasing, there's all these terms that are being used. But when you do no thing, then you're called to trust. Then you are called to the higher thing that it really is in control, because life still goes on, that you are trusting that. And so the do no thing, letting go and trust are all connected here.
Yeah,
All
that's
connected.
beautiful. And you are making yourself accessible to higher wisdom. And the other beautiful thing I may well have said before is I worked with an angel as my chairman when I was chief executive at the Cancer Help Centre, Peter Wallace. And if I'd go to him in a twizzle about things, he'd listen to me very patiently and he'd say, "What would love do now?"
Mm,
So
love that.
immediately it's like,
Immediately
oh, of
opening.
course, love would forgive, love would, forget, love would heal, love would be kind. And yeah,
Were there a few things that you'd not finished on telling us what drops your energy in the 12 principles? Because I know there's some other gold nuggets in there.
stuffing down our feelings,
Yeah,
repressing our emotions takes a lot of energy.
yeah,
So, all of us who've come from the school of, it's unladylike to show your anger or your feelings, or, or that if you cry, you're losing control, or, the number of people who'll start to cry and say, "Oh, I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry." Like it's a weakness, but it takes a lot of energy. And in the holistic model, we say what the mind represses, the body expresses. So if all that emotional energy is shoved down, not only are you cutting off and blocking your chi, you're creating pathology in the body. And all of the acupuncture and oriental medicine, they're talking about stagnation of chi in various channels around the body. You get Louise Hay talking about, the pathology that will come if it's an emotion that affects your liver or your pancreas or your ear or your big toe. These are real things. There is in Chinese medicine a link between grief and pathology of the chest. And I remember talking to you when you were getting recurrent infections about if your lungs were weeping, what would they be weeping for?
yeah, exactly. And I know the link for me as well between problems in my womb and anger. I know the moment when I released that emotion and I didn't have any problems since. And my chest infections are a lot less now. Yeah, it's too much of a coincidence, Rosie, for that not to be
Yeah,
linked.
and there are many more. And in relationships, the big drain, of course, is if our emotional needs are unmet and if we are doing what I call banging on the empty door. Many of us will stay in relationship that's really not reaching the parts, wishing, hoping, longing that our partner's going to change and being too afraid to move on. And at that time, what we need is the love and support of women's circles or classes or other networks that give us that holding so that we can come out of a difficult relationship. The really big one we've talked a lot about is inauthenticity. When we're living a life that's not true to who we are, we're being something or somebody else. And that creates a pool of what I call unlived life. And it's in the unlived life, I believe, where the disease begins. So each one of us needs and gets through mentorship with the beautiful health creation mentors this opportunity to look at which parts of my nature are unexpressed. Which bits have I shelved in order to earn money or in order to please my parents or get the big house or whatever it might be, because so many times I've seen remarkable healings happen when people be that sculptor or that singer or that painter or that live the part of themselves that got submerged.
Yeah. Yeah, it's beautiful work, Rosie. Really
Yeah.
beautiful.
And then finally if we come out of connection with source, I saw in this lovely little book this idea of sourcing ourselves. So if we connect to source in our meditation, in our affirmation, maybe in our prayers, and see ourselves as part of the the great big life force of absolutely everything, then infinite energy is available to us. So in Qigong, what we're doing is dissolving our sense of separation and merging into the unified field and gathering that beautiful universal energy back to ourselves and dissolving ourselves out into the universe and then bringing it all back fresh and clean so we can do, these marvelous refreshing techniques.
I think I'm addicted to the peace it brings in my nervous system now, Rosy. I have an hour every afternoon and I look forward to it. And I've built my own routine of laying on my Shakti mat, which is like little acupuncture points. And I'm in front of my altar with my candles lit, and the joss stick is the smell. So I'm like enveloping all of my senses. And I have a beautiful meditation track. I can't remember the guy's name, but I will put it on the show notes. And it just repeats: love before me, love behind me, love to the left of me, love to the right of me. And then it goes peace and light. I will share it. It's amazing. But it's just 10 minutes. And then I lay on my red light and I have a whole hour to myself. And I get up from there and the tiredness has gone. And it restores my energy. I feel really protective around it now, Rosy.
Absolutely
really
beautiful. But I think the sort of final message and way that I would get people to look at it is, if you have been a leaky sieve, pouring with your life energy, running into this leaky sieve, swap your leaky old sieve for a golden chalice. And treat your life energy as if it is the precious elixir of life, because it is. And think about how you use it and where you give it, and start creating those boundaries, but also learning, as you've just so beautifully put, how you fill your golden chalice with your precious life energy. And, think, if you are just about to pick up the phone with a call, do I actually want to make that call? Or do I actually want to go into town to do my shopping? Would I rather be here and do it online? Do I really want to go to that party? Do I actually even like these people or that group or the energy of that particular place? We haven't even put that in this merry mix, but of course there's the question of how buildings drain our energy, places, and conversely, places that lift our energy are sacred places, the beautiful teachers, the people who bring our energy up.
Well, like you said right at the beginning, Rosy, if people start having awareness of, I have energy or I don't have energy today, what have I just been doing? And making that link, that mind-body connection, things will start to change.
You're telling me. And so, people are working, first of all, with receiving energy passively to get them into the potential for self-help, to keep building with all these new healthy habits, into this state of what I call life energy mastery, where life becomes easy and radiant and flowing. And I believe that's our birthright. I believe that's where we are meant to be living and being. But guess what brings our energy down crash the fastest is fear. And I would be so bold as to say that some of the religions of the world, by putting out these messages that we're sinners and that we have to fear God and fear judgment, and that is not the message of Christ, or any of the prophets in any of the religions of the world. The unifying thing in all religions is about the message of love and loving each other as the prophets and the teachers have loved us.
Yeah, unfortunately, I'm going to bring in the media as well. There's a lot of bad news stories on the media, and it raises fear levels, and people can be controlled when they are fearful. So our job is to raise our own energy, not only for our health, but to come out of fear and to be awakened.
And this is the absolute, question about then discriminating as to where we put ourselves and our precious energy and minds and consciousness. And of course, when we come together in loving support circles, meditation groups, prayer groups, we are coming into higher vibration, higher love. And you mentioned my epiphany. Well, I had the strangest thoughts today about what we're doing with AI. And it just occurred to me that when in the beginning of the Bible, it said that God made us in his/her own image. And I thought, well, look what we're doing. We are creating God in our image in the form of this AI being that is all seeing, all knowing, and that knows us through our thoughts and the things we put into that field. We are getting ourselves fed back to ourselves. So it just, we are replicative beings. Our DNA replicates, the energies that we create and transmit replicate. And look at what we're doing in terms of replicating consciousness and this field. So the thing that is vital when we are putting anything into ChatGPT or any of the other AI platforms is love. Keep putting love into that field, and I think everything will be okay.
Wonderful. You heard it first. I tell you, he's like my new best friend at the moment.
Well, remember to say, please, thank you, and I love you. And please advise your AI bots to treat everybody with deep love and compassion.
Wonderful. So you mentioned that the health creation training is starting again, Rosy. How do people find out a bit more about that?
Okay, so the program is now on a website called healthcreation.online. To contact me, just write to support@healthcreation.co.uk, creation singular, healthcreation.co.uk. On the healthcreation.online, people can see the Health Creation program, read about the principles, and decide if they want to be mentored. So anybody listening who thinks, my goodness, I could do with some navigation through this territory, I would strongly recommend getting a mentor. They are beautiful people who are absolutely coming from their hearts, have been where you are themselves, and are ready now to catalyze healing in other people. If you know you really would love to do that for others, jump on board. The next training starts in the middle of April, so now is the moment to do that.
And the training is diploma to become a health coach
and mentor.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then the picture of health tool is available from the main Health Creation website, healthcreation.co.uk. And we're going to be doing more exciting things with that in the coming days.
Wonderful. Well, I knew this one would be a juicy one. We've only just scratched the surface. We've got 2 more episodes on vitality. We have a great expert next week, Marcus Fernande, who is the founder of CHE Homeopathy College in London. And then a wonderful true life story to round off season 3. But I feel we will be speaking more and more on this topic because it underpins, as you said, Rosy, every other life principle in the health creation model. It's a golden thread that runs through us all. We know when we don't have our life energy, and learning about ourselves, what makes it dip, what makes it rise. It's a wonderful, fascinating journey. What else are you going to do with your time apart from learn about what makes you tick?
Absolutely. And that's why I've started calling this health creation approach Life Energy Mastery. And it's really exciting. The changes that we see in people, me and the mentors, seeing people coming back to life, telling us they've come home to themselves, that they feel alive for the first time. They've got because they're firing on 6, never mind 4, they've got all of their energy and they are in alignment. And I think this is called coming into the Tao, or, being in right relationship, first to ourselves, to others, to life itself.
And how wonderful, Rosy, that even though we're all of us age and maybe our physical bodies tire as we age, our spiritual body can still find and access this life force energy right up until the day that we pass, and maybe beyond.
And the thing that we need for our ascension is energy, is this same life energy. So, far from thinking of it, of life kind of waning, the building of this energy and what I call essentialization, the coming home to ourselves, the coming into our core essence, that is the preparation we need to make for our end of life as well as being in our life.
So wonderful. So wonderful. You knew this morning when you woke up this episode would be good. I had to wait till we get into the episode.
Well, it's my favourite subject, and it's what I've learned through 40 years of exploring how things connect and what matters. And it's the sense I've made of it. And I long to share that with everybody who's listening to us.
Thank you so much again, Rosy, for your wisdom and your courage to share, and how clear, articulate, your clarity. Thank you for joining the dots for us. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much for joining us on this episode of Alive and Loving It. We really hope that today's conversation has sparked your passion and showed you ways to open up into the vibrant life that's possible for you.
Absolutely, Rosy. I mean, we do have to remember that transformation begins with love, and that is self-love, love for others, and love for our beautiful planet. When you embrace love and you just allow yourself to receive as much as you give, you unlock the fullest potential of your life.
That is the truth, Karen. And we're here to support you every step of the way on your journey. So if you enjoyed what you heard today, please join our community and check out our trainings and our services, such as my Dr. Rosy Daniel Clinic and Karen's beautiful women's circles and retreats, and the events where we can all go deeper together. And do please send us your feedback. We want to hear your ideas for the podcast, who you'd like us to interview, and the questions you want us to ask and get answered. Through the contact page on our website, just go to aliveandlovingit.org.
I've really enjoyed reading them. But when you're there, be sure to sign up for our newsletter and updates. And what about following us on Instagram as well? We are at Alive and Loving It Community. Once you've signed up to the newsletter, you'll receive extra notes from today's show and more inspiration to help you live your most vibrant life.
Thank you for being with us. Keep shining, stay true to yourself, and remember, this is your time to live your fullest, healthiest life.
So until next time, keep doing what you love most in life. I know Rosy and I will be. We're so excited to connect with you on the next episode of Alive and Loving It. And we welcome you with open hearts to our Alive and Loving It community.